There's something about a quiet June night that makes you believe in the lie of peace. I was sitting on our creaky back porch, the one I stained by hand this summer after we got married, listening to the buzz of cicadas. The porch light was flickering. It always did that, but I didn't bother fixing it anymore. I hadn't fixed a lot of things lately. Not the cabinet hinge in the kitchen. Not the silence between us. Not the way my wife, Leah, had started saying we when talking about someone from her office. We were late on that project. We had to stay past 8. We grabbed dinner after the meeting. That we had a name, though she rarely said it. Mason. Mason with the vintage car and the golden retriever and the perfectly ironed shirts. Mason who started showing up in stories and laughs. In the quiet way she checked her phone after midnight. But none of that is what broke me. It happened at her company's midsummer mixer, the kind where people pretend to care about synergy and drink too many spritzers by the patio heater. I didn't want to go. I wasn't dressed for it. I wasn't built for it. I work remotely, writing back-end code for a logistics app that no one outside the office even knows exists. I'm invisible in the real world, and I was definitely invisible that night. But she begged me to come, said it was important to her, said it would mean something. So I went. I ironed a shirt that didn't fit right, shaved too close, even wore that stupid cologne she always liked. I was trying. God, I was trying. And for about 30 minutes, things were fine. We smiled, clinked glasses, laughed politely at some joke her boss made about algorithms and avocado toast. Then Mason showed up. He didn't see me. At least he pretended not to. He kissed her cheek, told her she looked dangerous in red. She laughed. Not her usual laugh, but this light, breathy thing I hadn't heard since our honeymoon in Bar Harbor. I stood there, watching, listening, trying to blink it all away until he made a comment that wasn't funny. Something about how Leah took care of him better than HR ever did. Everyone laughed. Everyone except me. And I said quietly, "That's not okay." It wasn't loud. I didn't shout. I didn't cause a scene. But everyone turned. And Leah, my wife, my supposed partner, looked at me like I was the problem. "Trent, seriously, it's just a joke," she said. Then to him, "Don't mind him. He gets sensitive about stuff." She defended him in front of everyone like I was some awkward guest who couldn't take a joke. And that's when I said it. I don't even remember deciding to. The words just came like they'd been sitting in my chest too long. "Then maybe you should be the one married to him." Silence. The kind you only hear when a room realizes it just witnessed something irreversible. Leah's smile vanished. Mason finally made eye contact. And me? I just walked out. I didn't go home. I didn't even know where I was going. But I knew something had finally snapped. Not in a dramatic, glass-shattering way. More like a quiet thread that finally tore under the weight of being pulled too tight for too long. And I swear, somewhere in that long walk into the dark, I could still hear her defending him. I didn't go far that night, just far enough. I walked until the artificial brightness of the office building gave way to the flickering yellows of street lamps and the soft hum of traffic. Past the artisanal wine bars where young couples giggled over shared desserts. Past the parking lot where a car was still waiting, where mine wasn't. I ended up at a small park, one of those forgotten little corners of the city where swing sets creak with the memory of children that outgrew them and the benches are always chipped, and no one really notices the flowers blooming along the fences. I sat down on the bench nearest the fountain. It wasn't running. Nothing was. And for the first time in a long time, neither was I. My phone buzzed 6 times before I even looked at it. All from her. No name, just L. She had changed it from Leah Redheart sometime in the past year. I hadn't noticed until just then. It felt like such a small thing, but it hit me harder than the words she'd said at the party. I didn't answer. Not because I wanted to punish her. That's never been me. I just didn't have anything left in me to say that wouldn't have sounded pathetic, because that's how I felt. Not angry. Not betrayed even. Just tired of trying to matter in a space where I'd become background noise. People always assume cheating is about physical betrayal, about hotel rooms or secret text messages, but it's quieter than that, more gradual. It starts with inside jokes that you're not part of, stories that don't include you, looks you weren't supposed to notice. And then one night you find yourself sitting on a cold park bench realizing you've been replaced emotionally, mentally, and the worst part is they didn't even hide it. They just stopped caring if you noticed. By the time I got home, and I did go home eventually, it was past 2 o'clock in the morning. The house was dark, but not in a warm, asleep kind of way. No, this darkness felt deliberate, like it was waiting for me, like even the walls had chosen a side. She was in the living room, sitting on the edge of the couch in the same dress. Makeup wiped clean, except for a smear under one eye. Her shoes were by the door. Her phone was in her lap. "You didn't answer," she said, her voice flat. Not accusatory, just tired. I nodded and took off my jacket, hanging it on the chair like I always did. Routine, habit. That was us. We were a series of habits that didn't ask questions anymore. She stood up. "You embarrassed me." Those were her first real words. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "Can we talk?" Just a complaint about optics. That was the moment I felt something in me shift. Something deep. Something old and quiet and fragile. Maybe it was trust. Maybe it was whatever thread was still holding me to the idea that this marriage was worth holding on to. "I embarrassed you?" I asked. "You didn't have to make a scene, Trent. Everyone saw. That wasn't the place. You made me the scene." We stared at each other for what felt like a full minute. Her lips parted like she had more to say, but she didn't. Or maybe she realized there was nothing left she could say that would make me unhear the way she laughed at Mason's joke or the way she defended him. Then she said something that still echoes inside me. "I don't know when you stopped being fun to be around." That was it. Not a scream. Not an insult. Just a simple, devastating sentence delivered with no fire. That's how you know it's real. When the words aren't shouted, they're just surrendered. And suddenly, I wasn't mad anymore. I was numb. I walked past her into the bedroom, picked up the pillow and blanket from our bed, and made myself a spot on the couch. She stood there for a while before quietly going upstairs. We didn't touch. We didn't talk. We just became strangers who happened to share a mortgage. The next morning, I expected things to be different. Some kind of apology, some acknowledgement that last night had meant something. But she made coffee like usual, packed her work bag like usual. Even asked if I wanted her to grab anything from the store after her shift like usual, like nothing had happened. Except something had. And it wasn't just the words we said. It was the ones we didn't. It was the weight of all the things we'd left unspoken for far too long. And that was the morning I realized something truly terrifying. We were still married, but we were no longer us. You'd think the moment things fall apart would be loud. Yelling, breaking dishes, slammed doors, tears on the staircase. But it wasn't. Not for us. It was quiet. Crept in like fog at dawn. Soft, gray, unapologetic. The morning after the party, I expected something, even a bad something. I thought maybe she'd wake up with regrets or excuses or a confession, even if it came laced with deflection. But instead, she came downstairs like it was any other Thursday. Dressed in gray slacks, that off-white blouse she always paired with the red lipstick I used to love. She brewed coffee like muscle memory, humming to herself. Not a song, not a melody, just noise to fill the silence. I sat at the kitchen island, staring at my half-eaten toast, and realized I didn't recognize her anymore. She poured 2 cups of coffee, slid one toward me. No eye contact, no apology, just that forced, morning-friendly voice. "Do you need the car today?" I didn't answer. Not out of anger. I just didn't know how to answer a question that basic without unraveling. She took the silence as a no, grabbed her purse and walked out the door. Not a word about the night before. Not a single question about how I was feeling. No curiosity about the man who slept on the couch instead of the bed. She didn't even look back. That became our new rhythm. I pretend to be asleep when she got home late. She pretended not to hear me brushing my teeth at midnight. We stopped eating together, stopped watching our dumb Thursday sitcom. We didn't fight. We didn't cry. We didn't touch. We just coexisted in a space where love had been replaced by civility and silence. The worst part? I still missed her. That's the cruelest thing about loving someone who's already halfway gone. You're haunted by the version of them that still lives in your head. The way she used to wake me up with coffee and a kiss on the forehead when I had early calls. The way she used to text me, "Tell me something good," in the middle of the day just to keep connected. The way we used to laugh so hard at dumb videos we couldn't even breathe. All of that was gone. Replaced by a woman who smiled more at her phone than she did at me. A woman who now answered calls in the bathroom with the door closed. A woman who came home wearing a different perfume than the one I gave her last Christmas. I wasn't stupid. I knew what it looked like. But part of me still clung to the idea that maybe it wasn't that. Maybe it was just distance, stress, burnout. Maybe it was me. So I tried. I actually tried. I booked us a weekend getaway. Just the two of us. A cozy Airbnb by a lake 2 hours out. We used to love doing that. I even remembered to pack her favorite wine. She didn't say no. Just stared at the email confirmation and said, "Let me see if I can get the time off." She never mentioned it again. The trip never happened. Instead, a week later, she texted me that she'd be late again, working on a campaign launch. That was the same excuse she'd used the week before. And the week before that. That night I waited. I waited until 11:47 p.m. Then, I did something I hadn't done since I was in college and paranoid about a girlfriend's vague behavior. I downloaded a location tracking app. I hated myself for it, but I hated the not knowing more. She wasn't at work. She was in a residential neighborhood across town. It was Mason's neighborhood. I knew because I had once picked her up from a post-conference party there months ago. She had forgotten her phone and texted me from a coworker's number. At the time, I didn't think twice about it. But now I was staring at the map like it was some kind of cruel riddle, a puzzle made of lies and bad faith and soft betrayal. I didn't call her, didn't confront her. I just sat there on the couch, still wearing the hoodie I hadn't taken off all day, watching her little dot sit still on the screen like it belonged there. Like she belonged there. And that's when I realized something else. This wasn't just about Mason. This wasn't even about cheating. This was about me being the last one to know I was living in someone else's exit plan. The next morning, I didn't get up when the alarm went off. I heard it, the shrill digital chime slicing through the air like a reminder of normalcy. But I stayed exactly where I was, under a blanket that still smelled like her. It was ridiculous. She hadn't slept on the couch once, but I had for 11 days in a row. 11 nights of pretending the cushions didn't hurt my back, that I liked the view of the living room ceiling, that I wasn't dying a little more every time I heard the faint creak of the stairs as she climbed up to our bedroom without even glancing in my direction. I didn't go to work. I called in and said I wasn't feeling well. Technically, it wasn't a lie. I just didn't explain that the sickness was behind my ribs, somewhere deep, heavy, and constantly humming. Around 9 o'clock, she came down. I could tell by the scent of her shampoo, orange blossom and mint. She walked into the kitchen like everything was fine. Asked if I wanted toast. Toast. The strange what finally breaks you. It's not always some massive betrayal or a screaming match. Sometimes it's just the person who shattered you offering toast like they're doing you a favor. I stood up slowly. My hands were shaking, and I wasn't sure if it was from the 3 cups of coffee I'd already had or the truth trying to climb its way out of my throat. "You weren't at the office last night," I said. She froze. Her hand hovered over the toaster like it didn't know what to do now that her mind was elsewhere. "What?" I checked. "Don't lie to me." She looked down for a second. Her body language didn't change much, but I saw the hesitation, the split-second stutter in her breath. That was all I needed. "You were in Eastwood," I said. "That's not even close to your office or the campaign or anything related to work." She turned slowly, leaned against the counter, arms crossed, and then, like a scene from a movie I never wanted to be cast in, she said the one thing I didn't want her to say, the only thing that still left room for denial. "It's not what you think." There it was. The line people always fall back on when they know they've run out of road. "It never is it?" I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the alternative was falling apart right there on the kitchen tile. She didn't deny Mason's name when I said it. Didn't protest when I listed the dates and times. Didn't fight when I told her I tracked her phone. She just stood there, eyes wet, but no tears fell. Trent, I don't know what happened. I didn't plan for any of this. That's what everyone says when they burn down the house and then act surprised they're standing in ashes. Still no denial. I waited for her to say something. Anything. A confession. An apology. A desperate reach for what little remained of our marriage. But it never came. Instead, she asked me if I'd been reading her messages. No, I said. I didn't have to, and I hadn't. I never snooped through her phone. I didn't read emails or check DMs because by then I didn't need digital proof. I had lived it in silence, in distance, in the slow, suffocating erosion of us. She finally said it. I didn't sleep with him. It was quiet, almost ashamed. And maybe she believed it made a difference. Maybe in her mind, that line meant something. But I didn't flinch, didn't soften, because I knew what she didn't say mattered more. I walked to the counter, picked up my keys, and just stared at them for a long time. I don't care about the sex, I said. I care that you gave him all the things I've been begging for without using words. She opened her mouth to argue. I saw it coming, but I didn't let her. You laughed with him. You confided in him. You protected him, defended him over me. That night at the party, when I said something, when your husband said something, you looked at me like I was embarrassing you, like I was a stranger, and you made sure everyone knew it. The room was dead silent. No cars outside, no birds, just the sound of the fridge humming behind her and the clock ticking above the stove. She sat down slowly at the table, head in her hands. I wasn't shouting. I wasn't crying. I didn't want revenge or answers or even closure. I just wanted out. I think I need to leave for a while, I said. Not to punish you, not to run away, but because staying here is breaking me, and I don't think you see that. That was the truth. I didn't hate her, but I didn't recognize her anymore, and I didn't want to keep waiting for a version of her that wasn't coming back. She didn't beg me to stay. She didn't even ask where I'd go, just nodded. And for the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't felt in forever. Not peace, but the absence of fear. I left that afternoon with one duffel bag, my laptop, and no destination. It wasn't like the dramatic walkouts you see in movies. There was no suitcase rolling down the driveway, no slammed door, or shouted argument in the rain. I didn't even tell anyone I was going. I just grabbed a few clothes, some cash, and the charger I always forget. Then walked past Leia, who sat silently on the couch like someone waiting for a bus that might never come. She didn't say anything. Neither did I. I should have felt free when I stepped outside. Should have felt like the weight of all those unsaid words and fake smiles had been lifted. But instead, the quiet hit harder than the pain. It was a different kind of grief. Not the fiery, heartbreak kind, but the cold, hollow type that comes from watching something die slowly and being too scared to say it out loud. I drove for hours. No destination, no playlist, just roads and radio static. I ended up 3 towns over in a motel that smelled like bleach and regret. The kind of place with curtains that don't quite shut all the way and ice machines that groan like they're carrying the weight of everyone's bad decisions. The first night alone was awful. Not because I missed her in the romantic way. I didn't. I missed who she used to be. I missed the version of Leia who used to leave me notes in my coat pocket before client meetings. The Leia who once held my hand through my father's funeral even though she barely knew him. The Leia who used to turn toward me in bed instead of away. But more than that, I missed myself. I missed the man who used to have value in someone's eyes. I missed the feeling of coming home and actually being seen, not just tolerated. I missed being in a space that didn't feel like walking on thin ice, where the next casual sentence might trigger another cold shoulder or long silence. That motel became my weird little sanctuary for the next 3 days. I worked remotely from the stiff desk by the window, pretending I was just away on business. Ordered food I barely touched. Answered exactly 2 texts. One from my manager asking if I was okay. I lied. And another from my sister, who had no idea any of this was happening. I didn't tell her the truth. Not yet. I wasn't ready to say the words out loud and make them real. Leia didn't call. She didn't text either. That hurt more than I expected. Even if it was her guilt, even if she thought silence was the best damage control, part of me still wanted a message. Something, a sign that I mattered, that I wasn't just a phase she was outgrowing. On the fourth morning, I got tired of sitting in that stale motel room, scrolling through memories I didn't ask for. I packed up, grabbed a coffee from a gas station down the road, and started driving again, this time toward the lake. It was the lake where we used to camp together in the early days. Before jobs got complicated, before her hours became unpredictable, before Mason existed. We'd go out there with just a tent, cheap marshmallows, and a Bluetooth speaker that barely held a charge. It was messy and imperfect, but it was ours. I didn't bring camping gear. I wasn't there to relive memories. I just needed a place that reminded me of a time when I was still someone's first choice. I sat on the hood of the car for hours that day, watching the water shimmer and thinking about how many warning signs I ignored over the years. Little things. How her laughter slowly dried up at my jokes. How she stopped asking me how I slept. How she'd sit at the dinner table with her phone angled just slightly out of sight. How the word "we" slowly got replaced by "I." I used to think relationships ended with impact, some kind of cataclysmic event. But now I realize most of the time it's erosion. Quiet, gradual, merciless, like a shoreline being pulled away a grain at a time until you wake up one day and the ground beneath your feet is just gone. I slept in the car that night, couldn't bear another motel. The stars were cold, and the windows fogged with every breath. But I didn't care. That night, for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was at least real again. Not floating in some quiet, invisible limbo. I was here. I existed. I was feeling something. When I woke up, I had 3 missed calls from her. No voicemail, just the calls. I stared at the screen for a long time, then let it fall face down on the passenger seat. I wasn't ready to hear whatever she had to say. I didn't want her to explain anything. I didn't even want closure. I just needed time, distance, silence. Not the kind that erodes things, but the kind that helps you remember who you are outside of the person you once loved. Later that morning, I finally told someone. I called my friend Wyatt, a guy I hadn't spoken to in months, but who once told me that if anything ever went sideways, I should crash at his cabin. I didn't even have to finish explaining before he cut me off and said, "Just get here. I'll put on coffee." I drove 5 hours through back roads and fog to get there. And when I arrived, when I saw that cracked wooden deck and the crooked mailbox that still had his ex's last name scribbled out in Sharpie, I knew I was exactly where I needed to be. Wyatt didn't ask too many questions, just handed me a mug and pointed to the guest room. "You're not the first man to come here looking for air," he said. And I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I understood exactly what he meant. Wyatt's cabin wasn't anything special. No rustic, Instagram-worthy lodge with reclaimed wood walls or curated vintage charm. It was just a 2-bedroom structure off a gravel road with a weak heater and a porch swing that groaned like it hated visitors. But it had something I hadn't felt in weeks. The kind that filled your lungs without guilt. The kind that didn't smell like perfume you hadn't gifted or furniture you both picked out during happier years. There were no reminders here. No echoes, just pine trees, creaking floorboards, and the sound of your own thoughts, louder than you remembered them being. I didn't talk much that first night. Wyatt offered me a beer and a quiet fire, and I took both without pretending to be okay. He'd been through something similar a few years back. Different circumstances, but the same hollow stare, same unspoken fatigue. His ex had left him for someone she met at her yoga studio. He told me once that the betrayal wasn't even what hurt the most. "It's the part where they stopped seeing you as someone worth telling the truth to," he said. I didn't get it then. I do now. Over the next couple of days, a strange rhythm took hold. I'd wake up early, usually before sunrise because sleep never came easy out here. My dreams had gotten weird. Not nightmares, just vivid, mundane scenes from the past, but twisted. Like watching myself laugh with Leia at the county fair. Only her face would slowly blur into someone else's. Or hearing her voice call my name from another room. But when I opened the door, no one was there. I'd wake up with my heart racing, sweating in the cold. Every morning, the first thing I did was check my phone. Every morning, there was something new from her. Day 1, Are you okay? Day 2. Please call me. We need to talk. Day 3. Trent, you can't just disappear. Day 4. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel like you were replaceable. Replaceable. That word stuck to my ribs like a shard of glass I couldn't swallow. Not because it wasn't true, but because I knew she had finally realized it was. I didn't answer. Not out of cruelty, but because I couldn't handle hearing her voice. Not when it was the same voice that once sang off-key in the shower. The same voice that told me she wanted kids someday. The same voice that defended another man while I stood alone. But I read every message. I studied them like maps to a place that no longer existed. And part of me kept hoping she'd say something that would break the spell. Something that would make the fog lift and prove to me that she hadn't been gone long before that party. But the more she messaged, the more I realized she didn't even know what she was apologizing for. One evening, Wyatt and I sat on the porch with coffee and silence. He didn't ask for details. I appreciated that. But after a long pause, he finally said, "You know, you don't have to go back, right?" It hit me harder than I expected because until that moment, I think I had assumed I would. Maybe not right away, but eventually. Maybe because I was afraid of being alone. Maybe because I thought staying gone would make me the villain. Or maybe because I kept hoping that if I went back, things would somehow snap back into place, that we'd rewind the tape and find our way to before. But hearing it out loud, that I didn't have to go back, was like getting permission from the universe to stop drowning. That night, I opened my phone and started typing a reply to Leia. I deleted it, started again, deleted that one too. Took me 2 hours to send for sentences. I'm safe. I just need time. Please don't try to explain right now. I'm not ready to hear it. I hope you understand. She replied less than 5 minutes later. I do. Please just come home when you're ready. I'll be here. That word again. Home. I stared at it for a long time because, truth be told, I wasn't sure where home was anymore. It didn't feel like the house with the stone driveway and the squeaky floorboard in the hall. It didn't feel like the place where we used to watch thunderstorms together, where we planned out the names of our maybe future children, where we said, "I love you," without needing to prove it. Home was no longer a shared space. It had become an echo chamber filled with polite conversation and dead smiles. And I didn't know if I wanted to return to a place that had grown so good at pretending we were okay. The next morning, I decided to stay longer. Wyatt didn't say anything, just nodded and handed me a second blanket. We didn't talk about healing or forgiveness or even what came next, because sometimes what you need isn't a plan. It's just a place to fall apart where no one expects you to be whole. It was a Wednesday when she showed up. I remember that because Wyatt had gone into town to pick up groceries, and I was finally starting to feel the kind of silence that didn't ache. I was sitting on the back porch of the cabin wrapped in a throw blanket, sipping lukewarm coffee and watching squirrels try to fight over pine cones like gladiators in a dirt arena. It was stupid and perfect and exactly what I needed. A moment so ordinary it felt like life might actually begin again. Then I heard a car. Not Wyatt's truck. Something smoother. A sedan, maybe. I stood up slowly, heart already picking up speed like it knew what my brain hadn't caught up to yet. I walked around to the front and there it was. Her car, Leia's silver Camry, parked on the gravel like it belonged there, like she belonged there. She stepped out slowly, dressed in a blue sweater I'd never seen before, hair pulled back in a way that looked more like she tried to seem casual than actually felt it. She clutched her phone in one hand, her keys in the other, and for a second, just 1 second, she looked like the woman I married. "Hey," she said, voice soft. I didn't answer. Couldn't. My throat had gone dry, like the sight of her had wrung out everything I'd been building inside me for the past week. I needed to see you," she said. "I wasn't going to come. I didn't even know if I should, but not hearing your voice." "You shouldn't be here," I said. Calm. No anger, just the truth. She nodded, swallowing hard. "I know. I'm sorry, but I didn't know how to do this any other way." For a long moment we just stood there, her on the gravel, me on the porch. No hugs, no yelling, just miles of unspoken things between us. She stepped forward once, hesitated, then came closer, slow, careful. like I was some wounded animal that might bolt if she moved too fast. She stopped at the bottom step. "I'm not here to fight," she said, "or to explain everything. I know you said you weren't ready for that." "I'm still not," I said. That hurt her. I saw it flicker across her face. But she didn't leave. "I just need to say some things. And then, if you want me to leave, I will." I didn't tell her to go. I didn't say anything. So, she sat down on the first step, curling her arms around her knees like she used to when she was cold but didn't want to say so. "I know I hurt you," she began. "And not just with Mason. That's the part that broke it. But I see now it started long before that. I stopped choosing you. Little by little, I stopped showing up. I stopped seeing you. And by the time I realized what I was doing, it felt like we were already too far apart." Her voice cracked on that last word. She looked up at me, eyes red but dry. "I didn't sleep with him. I swear that on everything. But that doesn't matter anymore. Does it? Because even if I didn't cross that line, I still stepped out of us." That line hit me like a hammer to the chest because it was exactly what I'd been trying to articulate for weeks. She didn't cheat on me in the physical sense, maybe, but she still left emotionally, spiritually. Day by day, she gave the version of herself I loved to someone else. And she watched me shrink in silence while doing it. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said. "I don't even expect you to come back. But I needed to look you in the eye and say that I know what I did. I know I threw away something good, something rare. And if I could take it back, I would. Not because I'm afraid of being alone, but because you were the best thing I never learned how to hold on to." She stood after that, wiping her hands on her jeans like she was done, like she didn't know what else to offer. "If you need more time, take it. If you don't ever want to come home, I'll understand." But I had to say it out loud. And then she turned to leave. Just like that. No pressure, no demands. "No. Can we talk tomorrow?" Just a goodbye that wasn't really a goodbye. Not yet. But I couldn't let her go. Not like that. "Leia," I said. She stopped. "I don't hate you." She nodded but didn't turn around. "I don't forgive you either," I added. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I still needed you to know that." She turned then, eyes full of something heavier than tears. Regret, probably, or maybe just exhaustion. "I never meant for any of this," she said. "I know. And I did. That was the worst part. I knew she didn't set out to ruin us. It wasn't malicious. It was gradual, passive, the kind of hurt that comes from someone letting go too quietly." She got in her car, shut the door, and drove off without looking back. When the dust settled on the gravel road, I sat down on the porch step she just left. Same spot, same air, but everything felt different. I didn't know what I wanted, but I finally knew what I didn't want anymore. I didn't want to live inside a relationship where I was always trying to prove I mattered. I didn't want to go back to pretending the silences were just mood swings, that the absence of laughter was normal. I didn't want to keep watering a garden someone else had already walked away from. That night, I stared up at the stars for hours. No phone, no noise, just the sounds of crickets and wind and my own thoughts finally unclenching. I didn't know what came next, but for the first time in months, I was okay not knowing. 2 weeks passed after Leia's visit. She didn't call again, didn't text, didn't show up unannounced. And I think in her own way, she understood, maybe for the first time, that silence wasn't about anger anymore. It was about space. Not the kind meant to punish, but the kind you give someone when you truly want them to heal, even if it means they might never return. I stayed at Wyatt's cabin long enough for the trees to change. What started as a backdrop of green slowly turned into a canopy of amber and rust. Autumn had always been my favorite season. There's something poetic about how nature sheds everything it no longer needs. Not out of sadness, but necessity. It's a letting go that isn't tragic. It's just natural. And for the first time in a very long time, I started doing the same. I opened my laptop again. Not for work, but for writing. Something I hadn't done since college. Stories poured out of me, not about heartbreak, not about betrayal, but about rediscovery. I went hiking alone, just to hear the sound of gravel under my boots. I learned how to make breakfast without looking at my phone. I made playlists that didn't include songs tied to memories. I talked to Wyatt about nothing and everything: politics, old friends, whether or not birds remember faces. I started laughing again, first quietly, then fully. I even smiled at strangers when I drove into town for groceries, which shocked me more than it did them. And eventually, I stopped checking my phone first thing in the morning. That's when I knew I was healing. It didn't come with a big revelation or a dramatic turning point. It was quiet, almost imperceptible. One day I realized I hadn't thought about Leia in hours. Then it was a day, then two, and when I did think about her, it didn't feel like grief. It felt like looking at a photograph from a life that had ended on its own terms. I didn't hate her. I didn't miss her either. I simply understood her now in ways I never had before. She was human, flawed, lost in her own quiet battles. We both were. But the difference was I was finally willing to face mine head-on without trying to carry someone else's confusion on my back. A month after she left the cabin road behind her, I sent her a letter. Not an email, not a message, a real handwritten letter. I don't even know if she kept it, but I needed to write it. In it, I said, "Thank you. Thank you for the time we had, for the love that was real, even if it didn't last, for teaching me, unintentionally, that I had become someone I didn't recognize, and for giving me the quiet nudge to finally meet myself again." I told her I wasn't coming back, not to punish her, but because the chapter had closed. There were no more pages left in it, and if either of us kept trying to scribble something into the margins, it would only stain the good parts that had already been written. I ended the letter with something that had taken me all those weeks to understand. I forgive you, and I forgive myself, too. After that, I didn't hear from her again, and I was okay with that. Wyatt and I stayed in touch even after I left the cabin. I moved into a small rental on the edge of town. Not much, just 2 rooms and a little porch with a chipped railing. But it's mine. And when I sit on that porch with my morning coffee and watch the sun spill over the pines, I don't feel like I'm running anymore. I feel like I'm finally home. Not in a house, not in a relationship, but inside myself. Some days are still hard. I won't pretend they aren't. Healing isn't linear. Some mornings, a memory still hits out of nowhere. The scent of her perfume on a stranger's coat. The sound of her favorite band playing in a grocery store. But I don't run from it anymore. I let it pass like a wave that washes over then recedes. Because now I've learned that even after the most painful storms, the tide always settles. And in that stillness, you remember how to stand.